This is Rif on Beitza, Daf Chaf Beis, and probably through Chaf Gimel. We start with the Gemara. Ba minei Abba bar Marta me Abaye. So Abba bar Marta asked Abaye, "Ma l'chabos esaner b'yom tov mishum davar acher?" Can you extinguish a lamp on Yom Tov for the purpose of the other thing, namely marital relations? So Amar Lei, he gave him the runaround. He says, "After b'vayis acher, it's possible in another room or another house." So ein lo bayis acher mai. So let's say he doesn't have this other bias. So then what? Amar Lei, after lasos mechitza, it's possible to make a partition between the light and himself. There's a practice not to have marital relations with a lamp on in the same room. So that's why if you make a mechitza, it would be okay. So ein lo davar lasos mechitza mai. If he doesn't have something to make a partition, so then what? So after l'chapos alav esakli, it's possible to invert a vessel over it. Ein lo kli l'chapos alav mai. Let's say he doesn't have a vessel to invert over it, so then what? Amar lei asur. So finally he gave him a definitive ruling. He says it's forbidden in such a case. Esvei, he objected. This is Abba bar Marta objected to Abaye. Ein mechabenes b'kas b'shvil l'chos alaha. This is a brisa which states that we may not extinguish a piece of wood in order to save it, because you have mercy on it. You want to save it. V'im b'shvil shlo yitashein habayis. But if it's order so that the house doesn't fill with smoke, or that the pot doesn't fill with smoke, mutar. In such a case, it's permitted to extinguish a piece of wood. So Amar Lei, so Abaye said to him, "Hahi Rabbi Yehuda. This brisa that you just cited to me is from Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar lachem uchal tzarchechem. If it says that with the exclusion of malacha and Yom Tov is anything which is ochal nefesh, lachem. So lachem is for any of your needs. So ki ka'amina. What am I asking about here? Ki ka'amina and al rabbanon. I'm asking on the sages who argue on Rabbi Yehuda, and if so, what can we extinguish a lamp for the purpose of davar acher? So that's why I was asking that, or that's what I was telling you. Sorry. So v'chein Rabba v'chein Ameimar, and so to Rabba and Ameimar kulu dachol l'hamasni. So they all push off and reject this brisa. V'ukmek Rabbi Yehuda, and they establish this brisa in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda, l'meimra, which in order to say that this brisa and similarly Rabbi Yehuda is not halacha. We don't paskin like it. B'shaminan miha, and we deduce from this the leis hilchasa ki hamasni. So the halacha is not like the brisa. Ella asur l'chabos esabkas. It's forbidden to extinguish this wood. Ben l'chas laha ben shaloi tashin habayis ha'kedera hakal asur. Since we also learn that in this brisa that if you're trying to save the wood, or in order that the house doesn't fill with smoke, or the pot doesn't fill with smoke, everything is forbidden. So continuing with the Gemara, Ba'minei Abaye mi Rabba. So Abaye inquired of Rabba, "Ma'u l'chabos esadleika b'yom tov? Can you extinguish a fire? It's an out of control fire, and so you want to extinguish it b'yom tov." So I don't have any question where there's a danger to life. Of course you can extinguish it. Because even on Shabbos it would be permitted. When is it a question for me? If it's a case of loss of money. So in such a case, So Amar Lei asur. Rabbi said to him, it's forbidden. Ula visited the house of Rabbi Yehuda, Kam Sham'eh, and Ula's attendant got up, and Zakif la l'shragar, and he straightened the candle, the lamp there. So Perish Igbia es pihaner, he lifted up the mouth of the lamp, Kedei shechabeh, so that it would extinguish. So Esvei, Rabbi Yehuda l'Ula. So Rabbi Yehuda objected to Ula based on the actions, about the actions of attendant, based on the brisa, which says Hanosin shemen laner. If somebody puts oil into a lamp, chayv mishum mavir, he's liable because of mavir, kindling. And somebody who removes oil from it, chayev mishum mechabeh. He's liable because of extinguishing. And you, kevan shegbata saner, since you lifted up the lamp, lacharav, you lifted it, you raised it backwards. Once you raise it backwards, garamtlo kipo, you caused it to be extinguished. Come on, stopping manner, just like somebody who draws oil from it. So it should also be forbidden. Amrlei lavadatai. It wasn't with my knowledge. The attendant's action was his own actions. It wasn't my direction to do that. So Amar Yehuda, the kinsa shari. Rabbi Yehuda says that kinsa is permitted. We have slightly different gears in our Gemara. Instead of Rabbi Yehuda, we have Rav. But instead of kinsa, it actually says kanba. But it means the same thing. Kinsa or kanba is permitted. Perish. Kigon avuka shiasuya mechatichos eitzim ketanim. It's like a torch which was made from small pieces of wood. Im nozel biyomtav me'osan ha'eitzim. If you take from those pieces of wood on Yom Tov, shalo achsa bahem ha'ur, which the flame had not yet grabbed hold, had caught yet. So shari is permitted to do so. On with the Gemara. Rav Ashi inquired of a Meimar, Mahu b'chos ayin b'yom tov. Can you apply kohl? It's K-O-H-L. It's stibium. It's something that you put on the eye. So can you apply that to the eye on Yom Tov? And so they did this sometimes for medicinal purposes, and sometimes they did this for ornamental purposes. It was makeup. So can you apply this on Yom Tov? So when there is danger, kigon rira ditza dama v'dimasa v'kidcha, where there is danger if it's not done, such as where there is a discharge from the eye, a prickling pain, tears from the eye, or a burning sensation. And at the beginning of these ailments, it's no question to me that even on Shabbos is permitted to do it because of the sakana involved. I asked regarding the end of these ailments, and to improve one's vision. So, what's the halacha there? So, Amrulei asur. He said to him it's forbidden. And the Rif concludes, v'chein halacha, and so is the halacha. V'hani milim Yisrael. And this is specifically when another Jew does it, that there's a prohibition. But if a Gentile, if a non-Jew does it, the non-Jew has no isser to do actions like this, so minachri is permitted to do in these cases. Because a meimar permitted one to get kohl, this K-O-H-L, applied from a Gentile on Shabbos. And some say, he himself got this stibia applied on Shabbos. What exactly is your intent here? What are your thoughts that you're saying that this is permitted? The Amar of Ula Bereid Rav Eli, the needs of a sick person you can do via a non-Jew on Shabbos. And furthermore, Rav Hamnuna says anything which doesn't have danger, rather than doing it yourself, you can tell a non-Jew to do it, and he will do it. This is where you don't help him. Umar, but master, you who are doing it, Ameimar, you're helping him do it. Because you're opening and closing your eye. So Amrlei, Ikar Zvid Dekai Kvasach. Zvid actually agrees with you in this respect. He agrees that this is considered helping, and therefore, and also that helping is a problem. The Amrile Messiah in Bo Mamish, and I told him that assisting has no significance. He permitted somebody to apply. Permitted anybody to apply kohl, this KOHL, to one's eye on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. The Sfirale can Haradai, because he held, like the Naradans, the Sfiralahu, the Shtei Kedushas saying that there are two separate sanctifications on Rosh Hashanah, just like any other Yom Tov. In other words, it's a case of doubt on each day. The Shtei Kedushas saying, but we don't paskin like a Meimar in this, because the Kaimalan, the Kedusha Achasein, because we hold that both days are a single Kedusha. So there's no difference the first day or the second day. Ella, Mia, got Mihu. However, Damrinan Mihada Meimar, we learn from this thing of Meimar, Deshari Limichal Eina B'Yom Tov Sheni Shel Golias, that in a general Yom Tov, in the second day of Yom Tov, of all the other Yom Tovim, it's permitted to do so. Okay, on to Chaf Beis, Amid Beis. We're going to cite the Mishnah. The Ein Ofen Pasum Gritzim El Rikikin. We don't bake thick loaves, but rather thin loaves, wafers. V'chulei, and it continues. So now Tanya, they learned in a brisa. They Shamai Omrim Ein Osin Pas Ava B'Yom Tov. It seems to be the same thing, except they're using Ava as thick. So they Shamai say you don't bake thick loaves on Yom Tov. Beis Hillel Matir and Beis Hillel permit. So the Gemara now analyzes this. My Pas Ava, what exactly is these thick loaves? Pas Meruba. They conclude that it means a lot of loaves, many loaves. V'amai Karila Pas Ava, and how come they call it a thick loaf? Mishum Dinafisha Belisha, because during the time of kneading, it's there's a lot of it. So it's like one thick loaf. Continuing, on to the next daf in Rif, but still Chaf Beis Amid Beis. Afu Omer Shlosha Dvarim. This is the Mishnah starts. The previous Mishnah was talking about Rabban Gamliel, so here it's still Rabban Gamliel. So Rabban Gamliel also said Shlosha Dvarim Lahakel, three lenient things. Mechabdin Beit Hamitos, we sweep between the beds. The beds here mean between. They used to sit on these beds by the table. So at the end of the meal, there were these crumbs on the floor. So he said that you could sweep between these beds. Umanichin es hamugmar b'Yom Tov, and you could place incense on burning coals on Yom Tov. V'osin gedi makulas b'leil psachim, and you can make this gedi makulas. This was a roast whole goat together with its entrails. It was all roasted together, and he said you could do that on the night of Pesach. The Seder night, the Chachamim Oshin, and the Chachamim, the sages, forbid in all three of these cases. So, onto the Gemara. Amar Rav Asi, Machokas Lahariach. The Rav Asi said that the dispute is in terms of fragrance that you're putting this mugmar on. Aval Ligmar Habayas HaKelim Divrei Kol Asur. But in order to perfume the house, or to perfume clothing, everybody says that it's forbidden. Now this is actually a slight emendation of Rav Asi's statement, but it's the Gemara, after a whole bunch of back and forth and analysis, that emended the statement. So the Rif is citing the final version of that statement. Ibailahu, they asked, there was a question to them, Ma'ulashe, may one smoke? This doesn't mean smoking a cigarette. Perish, can you smoke the fruits in order to prepare them for eating on Yom Tov? So Amar Yehuda, al gabe gachalas asur mipnei shum chabeh. Upon a coal to smoke it, it's forbidden because he's extinguishing, namely extinguishing the coal. Al gabe cheres mutar, but upon pottery, on a clay vessel, it's permitted. And so there's this distinction between a coal and pottery. Vasiknan, we conclude, not like Rav Yehuda, it seems, but Rav Amar al gabe gachelas nami mutar. On top of a coal, it's also permitted. Media have abisra agumri. Just like is true regarding meat on coals, namely roasting meat on coals. Since you're able to do that, similarly you're able to smoke fruits on coals. V'chein amar Rav Ashi, l'ashen shari, to smoke stuff, namely fruits, is permitted. Just as by meat on coals. V'chein hilchasa, and we actually paskin like this. And now we're going to bring in a Gemara on Shabbos 134a that relates to this, namely about this meat on coals. Garcinon Perek Rabbi Eliezer Omer Im Lo Hevi Kli. So we learn over there in Shabbos. Tino Rabbanon Ein Mesanenes Chardal Mesanenes Shalo. You can't strain mustard seed in its own strainer. Ve'ein Mamtikin Oso Begachelas. Nor may we sweeten it with a coal. But Tanya, but we learned in a Brisa, Mamtikin also begachelas. You can sweeten it with a coal. So the Gemara there concludes Lo Kashya. Kan begachelas shel mateches, kan begachelas shel eit. Here we're talking about a coal made of metal, and here with a coal made of wood. Amalei Abayler of Yosef, Maishna mi bisra agumri. How is this different than meat on coals, which it would seem to make no difference if it's gachelas shel eitz or gachelas shel matachas. So Amalei hasam leka kiboy. Over there, there is no kiboy, namely by a metal coal. Hacha, but by a wooden coal, ika kiboy, there is extinguishing of it. So since there's extinguishing, you can't do it. Now we're going to continue with the Gemara in a minute, but the Rif actually has a slightly different girsa of the Gemara. I was citing the Rif's girsa. But we actually have a slightly different thing. It's in our version, in our girsa over there, where the answer of Rav Yosef is Amar Le Hasam Lo Efshar Hacha Efshar. In that case, it's impossible, whereas here it's impossible, which is the same answer that we have in a moment, about a little bit later in the Gemara over there, namely about making cheese. And it's possible that this girsa difference is significant. Because over here, according to the Rif quotes it, we would there's a distinction between gachelas shel matachas and gachelas shel eitz, and it's only a gachelas shel matachas over there that's permitted. And then if we're going to transfer it to our Gemara, so when Rava says even with a gachelas it's mutar, he could possibly be talking only about a gachelas shel matachas, a metal coal. And in fact, the fact that the Rif cites this would seem to imply as such. Now that's a little bit problematic, because if we look at the original dispute, Rav Yudah said al gabi gachelas asur mipnei shemechabeh, on top of a coal is forbidden because he's extinguishing, and it's only al gabi cheres mutar. And we conclude instead, like Rava, who says that even on a gachelas is permitted, just like bisra gumri, just like meat on coals, which it really seems like Rava is rejecting any problem of mechaba there, which seems to be at odds with our Gemara, unless we somehow harmonize it and say that Rava didn't actually think that the type of mechaba that was happening was considered extinguishing, or some kind of answer like that. But according to the version that we have in our own Gemara, where it's Amar Le Hasam Lefshar HaChavshar, that means in that case it's impossible to have it done before Yom Tov. It has to be done on Yom Tov. Whereas here it's possible to do before Yom Tov, and where it's possible to do before Yom Tov, you wouldn't make a distinction. So it's not clear how this actually would fit in with the Gemara over there, but if so, you wouldn't have this problem. Anyway, continuing. Abaye asked of Rabba this time, and our Gemara has him asking of Rav Yosef. Abaye me Rabba, Mal Gabein. Can you make cheese on Yom Tov? So Amar Le Asur. He told him that it's forbidden. Uma Ishna Milishin. How is this different from kneading, which you can do on Yom Tov? So now it doesn't have it here, but our version of the Gemara has Amar Le. He said to him, Hasam Lo Efshar. Hacha Efshar. There it's impossible, here it's possible. You can't do the kneading before Yom Tov, but the cheese making you could have made before Yom Tov. Amrei Nahardai Gvinta Bas Yoma Ma'alya, but the Nardans say that cheese made that very day is its best, is aliyah. So Hachi Kamar, this is what it means to say when the Nardan said it. Afilu bas yoma ma'aliyah, even that made its same day is excellent, is good. But of course, if you made it the previous day, it would also be good. Now, back to Beitza Chaf Gimel Lamed Aleph. The Kiturei Beyadei, Masa Umanhu Vasur. And Kiturei Beyadei, whatever that means, we'll define it in a second, is the work of a craftsman, and therefore is forbidden. Shamanu, Befeirusho, we heard his explanation is as follows: B'lashon Aravi, Tafrich alachmas. Whatever that means, I don't speak Arabic. I have some kind of idea what it means. V'yesh omrim, and others say shein ishun beisei dayim. Some say it's perfuming gloves. And presumably the first explanation is what other people give as an explanation, which is making pleats and folds in gloves. It depends on how you translate kituri. Okay. So continuing on the next daf in the Rif, but it's the same Beitza Chav Gimel Lamed Aleph. This is the Mishnah now. There were three things that Rav Elazar ben Azariah permitted in the sages for bad. What were they? His cow went out with the strap between her horns. Now, there's a dispute, so you could either consider it to be a burden, in which case it's Hotzah and it's an Isser on Shabbos, or else you could say that it's an ornament, and if it's an ornament, it wouldn't be a problem. So his cow did so, and the Chamim forbade in such a case. Makardin es habehema b'yom tov, and we may groom, specifically makardin with a curry comb, so you could groom an animal on Yom Tov. And we may grind peppercorns in their grinder on Yom Tov. And in each of these three cases, the Chachamim forbid. Continuing with the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Ein Mekardin Esta Behema B'Yom Tov. We can't do this Mekardin, this currying an animal with a curry comb, whatever this kind of comb is involved with Mekardin. You can't Mekardin Esta Behema B'Yom Tov. Because he's going to make a wound in it. Aval Mekartzefin. But you can do Mekartzefin, which is combing with a different type of comb. And we're going to define these two in the Gemara. The Chachamim Omrim, Ein Mekardin Aflo Mekartzefin. You can't do Mekardin or Mekartzefin, which is talking about grooming the behema with different types of combs. Onto the Gemara. It's no Rabbanan. Ezo Kirud, the Ezo Kirtzuf. What is this Kerud and what is this Kirtzuf? We need to define it. These terms that we used in the Mishnah. So, Kerud is Kitanim, the Osim Chabura. By Kerud, the teeth are small, and thus they can make a wound. Our scroll happens to say that it means with a metal comb whose teeth are small. Kirtzuf Gidolim, the teeth are large, Ve'enos and Chabura. And so they don't make a wound. And the definition here is, from our scroll once again, is that it's a wooden comb, and that's why its teeth are wide. Shalosh machlokos b'davar, and there's a three-way machlokes in the matter. Tanakama savar la Rabbi Shimon. The Tanakama who says that you can't do this kirtzuf on Yom Tov. Not this kirtzuf, sorry. It's they're studying Mekardin as a behema b'Yom Tov. So, in other words, the dispute between Rav Elazar ben Azariah and the Chachamim. So Rav Elazar ben Azariah said that Mekardin as a behema, and presumably the Chachamim forbid this kerud. The Tanakama hold like Rabbi Shimon. Tanakama said like Rabbi Shimon. The Amar davar shein miskavin mutar. Something which is not intended is permitted. The kerud afal gav de ka'avid chabura shari, and thus kerud, which is with this fine comb, even though he does make a wound, is permitted because davar shein miskavin is mutar. B'chol shein kirtzuf, and certainly this combing with a with a wide comb with big teeth, which don't actually make a wound. And this is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Davar Miskavin Asur. He argues with Rabbi Shimon, and he holds that something that's unintended is nonetheless forbidden. And therefore, the Kerud, the Ka'abed Chabura Asur, and combing with this fine comb, since it makes a wound, is forbidden. The Kirtzuf, the law of Chabura Shari. But Kirtzuf with a comb with wide teeth, which doesn't make a wound, is permitted. Rabbanan Safrei, and the sages who argue and forbid in both of them, they hold Rabbi Yehuda. They agree with Rabbi Yehuda, the Amar Davar Shein Miskavin Asur. The Gazvei Kirtzuf Atu Kerud, and they make a decree of Kirtzuf because you might come to do Kerud. Continuing with the Gemara. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Nachman, Halacha Rabbi Shimon. Rava cited Rav Nachman that halacha is like Rabbi Shimon in this. Sharei Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Modula, because we see in the Mishnah that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah agrees to him. So Amar le Rava Rav Nachman, V'lei Mamar halacha Rabbi Yehuda. So you have two people in the Mishnah that agree, but let's say that the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Sharei Chachamim, the Chachamim who argue on Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, they agree like Rabbi Yehuda. Sharei Chachamim modum lo, the Davar Shein Miskavin is aser. So Amar le, not Rabbi Shimon's Firulei. Indeed, you could say that, but I personally hold like Rabbi Shimon. And furthermore, Shaharei Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah modulo. Furthermore, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah agrees to him. V'chein hilchasa, and in fact, we paskin like that. We paskin like Rav Nachman that the halacha is Rabbi Shimon. On to the Mishnah. We're on Beitza Chaf Gimel Amid Beis. Harechayim shel pilpulin tmeim mishum shlosha kelim. The pepper grinder can become ritually impure as one of three vessels. Mishum klei kibul, because it's a vessel which is a receptacle, which we see in the Gemara. It's the bottom part that catches the stuff. Mishum klei matachot, and because it's a metal vessel, the upper part, which does the grinding, is a metal vessel, and therefore is makapel tumah. And mishum klei kavara, and because it's also a sieve, that's the middle part. The Mishnah continues. Agala shel katan, a child's wagon, tmea midrash. It's susceptible to ritual impurity from daras on it, from sitting or leaning on it. It tells b'Shabbos, but it may be moved on Shabbos. Ve'ena negreres el al gabe kelim, but it can only be moved or dragged over clothing, but not over a dirt floor, because we don't want to create a furrow in the ground. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol HaKelim Ein Negrarim Chutz Min HaAgala B'nei Shehi Koveshet. Rabbi Yehuda says that all vessels can't be dragged, except for this wagon, because it doesn't create a furrow and it presses down rather than dragging the dirt. Onto the Gemara. Amar Rav Nachman, Zodivei Rabbi Yehuda. The one who makes this distinction and says that only this agala is permitted is Rabbi Yehuda. Aval Rabbi Shimon Omer, but Rabbi Shimon, who we paskin like, says Gor Adam Mita Kisei V'Stafso. Somebody can drag a bed, a chair, or a bench. As long as he doesn't intend it to create a furrow. Because Rabbi Shimon again holds that Davar Shein Miskavein is mutter. The Kaimelan Rabbi Shimon. And we paskin like Rabbi Shimon. This is the end of Perek Yom Tov. We're going to start the next one, the next video with the next Perek.